The iron shackles around Luna Thorne's wrists had worn grooves into her skin over the past 3 days, but she'd stopped feeling the pain hours ago. What was one more scar among the dozens that already crisscrossed her arms like a roadmap of suffering? She stood on the weathered wooden platform, squinting against the afternoon sun that seemed determined to blind every potential buyer who bothered to look her way. Which, so far, wasn't many. "Come now, gentlemen." The auctioneer's voice cracked with desperation as he gestured toward Luna with theatrical flourish. "Look at those unusual eyes. Surely someone appreciates uniqueness." A few scattered chuckles rippled through the sparse crowd. Luna kept her gaze fixed on a point somewhere above their heads, refusing to meet the curious stares directed at her mismatched eyes, one blue as winter sky, one green as forest moss. The mark of her bloodline. The mark that had condemned her. "Cursed," someone whispered from the crowd, just loud enough for her to hear. "Those eyes mean bad luck. Everyone knows that." If only they knew how right they were, Luna thought grimly. Bad luck seemed to follow her like a faithful hound. 7 auctions in 5 years, and here she was again, displayed like defective merchandise that kept getting returned to the store. "The bidding will start at 50 gold pieces," the auctioneer announced with forced enthusiasm. Silence stretched across the marketplace like a held breath. Luna fought the urge to laugh. 50 gold pieces? Last time, she'd gone for 30, and the time before that, 25. She was apparently depreciating with age and experience. 40, the auctioneer tried, his voice climbing higher. Surely someone sees the potential here. More silence. A vendor hawking meat pies 3 stalls over was doing better business than her auction. Luna couldn't blame the buyers, really. Who wanted a broken Omega whose wolf was so damaged she could barely shift? Who needed a servant who flinched at sudden movements and had night terrors that woke half the pack? "She looks half dead," commented a portly alpha in expensive furs. "What use is an Omega who can't even stand straight?" Luna straightened her shoulders reflexively, then immediately regretted drawing attention to herself. The movement sent a sharp pain through her ribs, a parting gift from her previous owner, Alpha Garrett, who discovered that hitting her didn't improve her performance as a pack servant. The memories crashed over her like they always did, unbidden and unwelcome. She was 12 again, hiding in the closet while angry voices echoed through their family home. Her father's voice, strong and defiant, "I know what you've done, and I won't let you get away with it." Her mother's scream. The sound of breaking furniture, shattering glass, and then, silence. By morning, both her parents were dead, and the pack elders were explaining to a traumatized little girl that her father had been a traitor, her mother a collaborator. The Thorne bloodline was tainted, they said. Corrupted. Luna would be cast out for her own good and the safety of the pack. For your own good. The phrase that had followed her through 5 years of being passed from pack to pack like an unwanted burden. Alpha Morrison had said it when he sold her to Alpha Garrett. Alpha Garrett had said it when he returned her to the auction house last week, claiming she was defective merchandise. 30 gold pieces. The auctioneer's voice was getting shrill now. She's young, she's what, exactly, called out another potential buyer, this one a thin man with calculating eyes. She can barely manifest claws, from what I hear. And those scars suggest she's trouble. Luna's wolf stirred weakly in her chest, a flutter of defiance that felt more like the memory of strength than actual power. Once, her wolf had been fierce, protective, proud. Now it cowered inside her like a beaten animal, too afraid to fully emerge. Look at her just standing there, the thin man continued. Doesn't even have the sense to try to look appealing. What kind of Omega doesn't know how to present herself? The kind that had learned that looking appealing often made things worse, Luna thought. The kind that had discovered that the more you tried to please people, the more creative they became in their disappointment. 25 gold pieces. The auctioneer was practically pleading now. Surely she's worth 25. A long pause. Luna could feel sweat beating between her shoulder blades despite the cool autumn air. This was it, the moment when they'd declare her unsellable again. She'd be taken back to the holding cells, kept for another month until the next auction, fed just enough to keep her alive and not a bite more. You know what? The portly alpha in furs shook his head. I'll give you 15. But only because I need someone to clean the latrines, and she looks desperate enough not to complain. Luna's stomach clenched. She remembered the latrine duty from her time with Alpha Morrison. The smell that never quite washed off, the way the other pack members looked at her afterward, like she was something dirty that had crawled up from the sewers. 15 going once, the auctioneer called, relief evident in his voice. Luna closed her eyes. This is your life now, she told herself. Stop hoping for better. Stop thinking you deserve better. Going twice. A memory surfaced unbidden, her mother brushing her hair before bedtime, humming an old lullaby about moon goddesses and brave warriors. You're special, little star, her mother had whispered. Never forget that. No matter what anyone tells you, you're special. Special. Luna almost snorted. Special like a three-legged horse was special. Special like spoiled milk was special. Soul. 50,000 gold pieces. The voice cut through the marketplace like a blade through silk, deep, commanding, and utterly confident. Conversation stopped. Vendors paused mid-pitch. Even the children stopped running between the stalls to stare. Luna's eyes snapped open. 50,000? That was more than some pack's entire annual income. That was enough to buy a small army, or a mansion, or... The crowd was parting like water, creating a clear path from the main road to the auction platform. Luna's breath caught as she saw who was walking toward them. Alpha King Damon Blackthorne. Even if she hadn't recognized his face from the wanted posters, though those hardly did him justice, his presence would have given him away. Power radiated from him like heat from a forge, making every other alpha in the marketplace unconsciously step back and lower their eyes. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair that looked like he'd been running his hands through it and gray eyes that seemed to see everything at once. He was also, according to every story Luna had ever heard, utterly ruthless. The king who had expanded his territory through conquest and cunning, who showed no mercy to enemies and took no prisoners. They said he'd never been defeated in single combat. They said he could kill a man with his bare hands before the victim even realized he was in danger. They also said he'd never taken a mate, despite being 28 years old and having his pick of any eligible female in the known world. Your Majesty, the auctioneer stammered, nearly falling off his platform in his haste to bow. This is most unexpected. 50,000, Damon repeated, his gaze fixed entirely on Luna. Do I have any competing bids? The marketplace had gone so quiet Luna could hear her own heartbeat thundering in her ears. 50,000 gold pieces. For her. The broken Omega nobody wanted. No, Your Majesty, I don't believe. The auctioneer looked around wildly, as if expecting someone to suddenly outbid the most powerful alpha on the continent. Going once. Going twice. Sold to His Majesty, Alpha King Damon Blackthorne. The world seemed to tilt sideways. Luna felt her knees buckle, her vision narrowing to a tunnel of spinning gray dots. She was vaguely aware of falling, of strong arms catching her before she could hit the wooden platform, of being lifted against a chest that smelled like pine forests and winter mornings. Easy, a voice murmured near her ear, the same voice that had bid 50,000 gold pieces for her worthless life. I've got you. Luna tried to speak, to ask why, to demand an explanation, but consciousness was slipping away from her like water through her fingers. The last thing she heard before darkness claimed her was that voice again, speaking to someone else in low, urgent tones. She has no idea who she really is, does she? The last of the Moonfire bloodline, this changes everything. Moonfire? Luna thought in the split second before awareness vanished entirely. But that was impossible. The Moonfire bloodline had died out centuries ago. Hadn't it? When Luna came to, she was moving. The gentle swaying motion and the soft creak of well-oiled wheels told her she was in a carriage, an expensive one, judging by the smooth ride and lack of jarring bumps. She kept her eyes closed and tried to assess her situation without alerting anyone that she was awake. Her shackles were gone. She could feel soft fabric against her skin instead of rough hemp. Someone had wrapped her in what felt like a cloak lined with fur. The air smelled different too, cleaner somehow, with an underlying scent that made her wolf stir with something that might have been recognition. How long until we reach the castle? The voice belonged to Alpha King Damon, closer than she'd expected. He must be sitting across from her in the carriage. 3 hours, Your Majesty. This voice was unfamiliar, gravelly, with the careful respect of someone speaking to a superior. The men are asking questions, though. 50,000 gold pieces for an Omega? It's unprecedented. Let them ask. There was amusement in Damon's tone, but also something harder. My business is my own. Of course, Your Majesty. It's just. The second voice hesitated. The council won't be pleased. They've been pressuring you to take a mate from one of the noble bloodlines. A political alliance. This Omega girl. Marcus. Damon's voice went cold enough to freeze fire. Are you questioning my judgment? No. No, of course not, Your Majesty. I just. Good. Because my decisions regarding this particular Omega are not open for debate. Is that understood? Yes, Your Majesty. Absolutely. Luna felt the carriage hit a particularly deep rut, jostling her against the side wall. She couldn't suppress a small gasp of pain as her bruised ribs protested the movement. She's awake, Damon observed quietly. Luna debated whether to continue pretending unconsciousness, but decided there wasn't much point. She opened her eyes slowly, squinting against the late afternoon sunlight streaming through the carriage windows. Damon was indeed sitting across from her, studying her with those unsettling gray eyes. Up close, he was even more intimidating than he'd appeared at the auction. The sharp angles of his face could have been carved from granite, and there was a controlled stillness about him that spoke of barely leashed power. Next to him sat a man she assumed was Marcus, older, with graying hair and scars that spoke of many battles. He was watching her with obvious suspicion. Where are you taking me? Luna's voice came out as barely more than a whisper. Her throat was dry as sand. Damon reached for something beside him and produced a water skin. Drink first. Then we'll talk. Luna eyed the water skin suspiciously. In her experience, kindness always came with a price, and she'd learned to be wary of unexpected generosity. It's not poisoned, Damon said, as if reading her thoughts. If I wanted you dead, I wouldn't have spent 50,000 gold pieces to acquire you first. That was actually a fair point. Luna accepted the water skin with trembling hands and drank gratefully. The cool water eased her parched throat, and she had to force herself not to drain the entire thing at once. Where are you taking me? She repeated when she'd had enough. Home, Damon said simply. I don't have a home. Something flickered across his expression, too quick to interpret. You do now. Luna stared at him. I don't understand. Why 50,000 gold pieces? I'm nothing. Nobody. You could have bought a dozen prime breeding females for that amount. Could I? Damon's tone was neutral, giving nothing away. Yes. You could have bought anyone. Someone beautiful, someone useful, someone who isn't. She gestured helplessly at herself. This. And what, exactly, is this? The question caught her off guard. Broken, she said finally. Used up. Worthless. Marcus made a disgusted sound under his breath, but Damon simply continued watching her with that steady, unnerving gaze. Who told you that? He asked. Everyone. The word slipped out before she could stop it, carrying more pain than she'd intended to reveal. Then everyone was wrong. Luna blinked. In all her years of being shuffled from pack to pack, no one had ever contradicted the general consensus that she was damaged goods. The simple statement hit her like a physical blow. You don't even know me, she whispered. Don't I? Before she could ask what he meant by that cryptic response, the carriage began to slow. Marcus leaned out the window, then turned back to them. "We're here, Your Majesty." Luna looked out her own window and felt her breath catch. They were approaching a castle that seemed to grow directly out of the mountainside itself, gray stone walls rising seamlessly from gray rock cliffs, towers reaching toward the clouds like grasping fingers. It was beautiful and terrifying and utterly impossible. "Welcome," Damon said quietly, "to Blackthorn Castle." The carriage rolled through massive iron gates that groaned shut behind them with an ominous clang. Luna's wolf stirred uneasily as they entered the courtyard, sensing something that her human mind couldn't quite grasp. The very air felt different here, charged, like the moment before lightning struck. As they came to a stop, uniformed servants appeared to tend to the horses and unload luggage. Luna realized she didn't have any luggage. Everything she owned in the world was the torn dress she wore and the memories she carried. Damon stepped out first, then turned to offer her his hand. Luna stared at it for a long moment. Accepting help had always made her situation worse somehow, created expectations, debts, complications she couldn't navigate. But what choice did she have? She was hundreds of miles from anywhere she'd ever been, in the stronghold of the most powerful alpha alive, purchased for a sum that could feed a village for a year. Whatever game was being played here, she was already a piece on the board. She took his hand. The moment their skin touched, something electric shot up her arm, not painful, but startling in its intensity. Damon's eyes widened slightly, and she wondered if he'd felt it too. But before either of them could comment, he was helping her down from the carriage with the same careful courtesy he might show a noble lady. "Marcus will show you to your rooms," he said once her feet were firmly on the ground. "You'll want to rest and eat before." "Before what?" Luna interrupted. "Before you tell me what you really want from me? Because this." She gestured at the castle, the servants, his careful politeness. "This isn't real. Nobody spends 50,000 gold pieces on charity." A small smile tugged at the corner of Damon's mouth. "No," he agreed. "They don't. So what's the real reason?" For a moment, she thought he might actually tell her. His gray eyes seemed to be weighing something, calculating risks and benefits with the precision of a general planning a battle. "Get some rest, Luna," he said finally. "Tomorrow, we begin your real education." And with that infuriating non-answer, he strode away across the courtyard, leaving her alone with Marcus and a dozen questions that were multiplying by the minute. Marcus cleared his throat. "If you'll follow me, miss, I'll show you to your quarters." Luna had no choice but to follow, her bare feet silent on the cold stone. As they walked through corridors lined with tapestries and lit by torches that seemed to burn without smoke, she caught glimpses of servants who watched her pass with curious but not unkind eyes. "Here we are," Marcus announced, stopping before an ornate wooden door. He produced a key and unlocked it, pushing it open to reveal. Luna's jaw dropped. The room beyond was larger than any space she'd ever been allowed to occupy. A four-poster bed dominated one wall, draped in rich blue fabric that matched the thick carpet beneath her feet. A fireplace crackled merrily in the corner, casting dancing shadows on walls lined with bookshelves. Through tall windows, she could see the sun setting over mountains that stretched to the horizon. "There's a bathing chamber through that door," Marcus pointed to the left. "Fresh clothes in the wardrobe. Dinner will be brought up in an hour. Cook's been instructed to prepare something substantial." Luna stepped into the room slowly, as if moving too quickly might shatter the illusion. "I don't understand." "What's to understand?" "This is a guest room. A room for someone important." Marcus studied her with those suspicious eyes. His Majesty's instructions were very specific. "You're to be treated as an honored guest, not a servant." "But I'm not an honored guest. I'm..." She struggled for words. "I was purchased at auction. Like livestock." "That may be how you arrived," Marcus said carefully, "but it's not what you are now." Before Luna could ask what that meant, he was gone, closing the door behind him with a soft click. She heard the key turn in the lock and felt a familiar knot of panic form in her stomach. Locked in. Trapped. But as she tried the handle, she discovered the door opened easily from the inside. The lock was to keep others out, not to keep her in. What kind of prisoner gets quarters like this? She wondered, running her fingers along the smooth wood of the bed frame. What kind of slave gets treated like royalty? She walked to the windows and looked out at the darkening sky. Somewhere out there was the life she'd known, brutal, uncertain, but at least comprehensible. Here, nothing made sense. Kindness without conditions. Luxury without demands. Power that didn't seem interested in crushing her. A soft knock at the door interrupted her brooding. "Come in," she called, expecting to see a servant with her promised dinner. Instead, Damon entered, carrying a tray himself. The domestic image was so incongruous, the feared Alpha King serving food like a common servant, that Luna almost laughed. "You didn't have to do that yourself," she said. "I know." He set the tray on a small table near the fireplace, then looked around the room with satisfaction. "Everything to your liking?" "It's..." Luna searched for adequate words. "It's the most beautiful room I've ever seen." "Good." He moved toward the door, then paused. "Luna?" "Yes?" "That thing you said in the carriage. About being broken?" His gray eyes found hers across the room. "You're not. Bent, maybe. Tested. But not broken. Broken things can't heal, and you..." He smiled, and for the first time since she'd met him, it reached his eyes. "You're going to heal beautifully." The door closed behind him with a soft click, leaving Luna alone with her racing thoughts and the echo of words no one had ever spoken to her before. "You're going to heal." Could it really be that simple? Could someone just decide she was worth fixing? Luna sank into the chair beside the food tray and lifted the cover. The smell of roasted meat and fresh bread filled the air, rich and nourishing and completely unlike the scraps she was accustomed to receiving. Her stomach growled loudly, reminding her that she hadn't eaten since yesterday. As she began to eat, slowly at first, then with growing enthusiasm as her body recognized real food, Luna found herself thinking about Damon's parting words at the auction. Something about Moonfire bloodline, about her not knowing who she really was. What could he possibly know about her that she didn't? Her parents were dead, her pack had cast her out, and she'd spent the last 5 years being reminded daily that she was worth less than nothing. What secrets could possibly remain? But as she sat there in luxury she'd never imagined, purchased by a king for reasons she couldn't fathom, Luna began to wonder if maybe, just maybe, everyone who told her she was worthless had been wrong about more than just her value. Maybe they'd been wrong about everything. If you are enjoying this video, do well to like this video and subscribe to this channel. Chapter 2. Luna woke to sunlight streaming through windows she'd forgotten weren't barred. For a moment, disorientation clouded her thoughts. Silk sheets instead of straw, the scent of pine and mountain air instead of unwashed bodies and despair. Then memory crashed back. The auction, the impossible bid, Alpha King Damon Blackthorn's storm-gray eyes studying her like she was a puzzle he intended to solve. She sat up slowly, her body protesting. Every muscle ached from years of poor nutrition and harder treatment, but for the first time in memory, she'd slept without nightmares. The bed was sinfully soft, the room warm from banked coals in the fireplace. Someone had left fresh clothes on the chair, a simple but well-made dress in forest green, soft leather boots that looked like they'd actually fit. Real clothes. Not cast-offs or charity, but garments chosen specifically for her. Luna touched the fabric with trembling fingers. In her experience, gifts like this came with prices that were always higher than anticipated. But what choice did she have? Her auction dress was little more than rags held together by stubborn threads and desperate hope. The bathing chamber made her gasp. A copper tub large enough to lie down in, filled with steaming water that smelled of lavender and something else, something wild and clean that reminded her of moonlit forests. Soap that didn't smell like lye. Thick towels that wrapped around her like an embrace. When was the last time she'd been truly clean? Luna sank into the water with a sigh that came from her very soul. The heat soaked into her bones, loosening knots of tension she'd carried so long she'd forgotten they weren't permanent fixtures. She scrubbed away years of grime and indifference, watching the water turn gray, then murky. Her reflection in the still surface showed a stranger, a young woman with sharp cheekbones and those damning mismatched eyes, but clean now, almost, pretty. The thought sent a chill through her. Pretty girls attracted attention, and attention had never brought her anything good. Dressed in clothes that fit her properly for the first time in years, Luna ventured out of her room. The corridor stretched in both directions, lined with portraits of stern-faced ancestors and tapestries depicting great battles. She had no idea where she was supposed to go or what was expected of her. So she chose a direction and started walking. The castle was a maze of interconnected passages and chambers, each more magnificent than the last. She passed a great hall with a table that could seat 50, a library that made her breath catch with its towering shelves, and windows that offered views of mountains that seemed to touch the sky itself. But it was strangely quiet. She heard servants moving about their duties, but saw few people. Those she did encounter nodded politely and continued about their business without the curious stares or whispered comments she was accustomed to. Lost already? Luna spun, her heart hammering against her ribs. Damon stood in a doorway she hadn't noticed, dressed in simple black leather that somehow made him look more dangerous than royal finery would have. In daylight, she could see the lines around his eyes that spoke of burdens carried too long, the scar along his left temple that suggested his reputation for violence wasn't entirely fabricated. "I didn't know where I was supposed to go," she said, fighting to keep her voice steady. "Wherever you like. This isn't a prison, Luna." She almost laughed at that. "Isn't it? I can't exactly leave." "Can't you?" He stepped aside and gestured down the corridor. "The front gate is that way. No one will stop you." Luna stared at him. In her experience, when captors offered freedom, it was because they knew you had nowhere to go. She was hundreds of miles from anything familiar, with no money, no allies, no pack willing to take her in. "That's not really freedom," she said quietly. Something shifted in his expression, approval, maybe? True freedom is rarely as simple as an unlocked door. He began walking, and after a moment's hesitation, Luna fell into step beside him. His stride was long but not hurried, and she found she could match his pace without struggling. "You said something yesterday," she ventured. "At the auction. About Moonfire bloodline?" Damon's step didn't falter, but she felt the change in him, a subtle tension, like a bowstring drawn taut. "What do you remember about your parents?" The question hit her like a physical blow. "They're dead." "I know. But what do you remember about them? Before they died?" Luna wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold despite the mild morning air. "My father was strong. A good alpha. Everyone respected him. My mother." Her voice caught. "She used to sing to me. Old songs, lullabies about moon goddesses and ancient magic. She said I was special. She was right." "No." Luna's voice turned bitter. "Special people don't get sold at auction. Special people don't get passed around like unwanted furniture." Damon stopped walking and turned to face her. "Your father wasn't executed for treason, Luna. He was murdered because he discovered something someone wanted to keep hidden." The world seemed to tilt sideways. "What?" "Your bloodline isn't cursed. It's coveted. And very, very dangerous to certain people who prefer the current order of things." Luna's knees felt weak. She reached for the stone wall to steady herself, but Damon's hand was already there, strong and warm against her elbow. "I don't understand," she whispered. "You will. But not here, not in the open." He glanced around the corridor as if checking for listeners. "Come with me." He led her deeper into the castle, downstairs she hadn't known existed, through passages carved from living rock. The air grew cooler, charged with something that made her damaged wolf stir uneasily. They emerged into a circular chamber lit by torches that burned with silver flames. The walls were covered in symbols Luna didn't recognize but that seemed familiar somehow, like a language she'd once known but forgotten. At the center of the room stood a pedestal holding something wrapped in midnight blue silk. "This belonged to your grandmother," Damon said, carefully unwrapping the object. Luna gasped. It was a blade, not large, but perfectly balanced, with a hilt carved from what looked like moonstone. The metal gleamed silver-white, and along the blade were etched the same symbols that covered the chamber walls. "My grandmother died when I was 5, Luna said slowly. "She was ordinary. Just a pack elder's wife. Your grandmother was Queen Isadora Moonfire, last of the moon goddess bloodline." Damon's voice was soft but carried absolute conviction. "And you, Luna Thorne, are her heir." The words hung in the air like a challenge to reality itself. Luna stared at the blade, at the symbols, at Damon's face, looking for some sign that this was an elaborate joke or delusion. "That's impossible," she said finally. "Is it? Haven't you always felt different? Haven't you always known you were meant for something more than the life they gave you?" Luna thought of her mother's lullabies, of dreams that felt more like memories, of the way her wolf had always felt caged, diminished, like something vital had been stolen from it. "The Moonfire bloodline died out centuries ago," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. "That's what they wanted everyone to believe. Your grandmother went into hiding, took a false name, married your grandfather to disappear into obscurity. It should have worked." Damon's jaw tightened. But someone found out. Someone who couldn't afford to let the bloodline survive. Who? "That's what your father discovered before they killed him. A conspiracy that goes deeper than you can imagine, with tentacles reaching into every major pack on the continent." Luna's head was spinning. "Why are you telling me this? What do you want from me?" Damon was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough with something she couldn't identify. "Because I've been looking for you my entire adult life. Because there are things in this world that only you can do, powers that only you can wield. And because..." He met her eyes, and she saw vulnerability there that his reputation couldn't have prepared her for. "Because the prophecies say that without the Moonfire heir, we're all going to die." Before Luna could process that terrifying statement, footsteps echoed from the passage behind them. Damon's hand moved to the sword at his hip with fluid grace, his entire demeanor shifting from confessor to warrior in a heartbeat. "Your Majesty." It was Marcus, but his voice carried urgent concern. "We have a problem." "What kind of problem?" 3 packs have formed an alliance. They're demanding you surrender the girl." Marcus's eyes flicked to Luna, then back to Damon. "They claim she's dangerous. That keeping her alive violates the concord of Black Moon." Luna felt the blood drain from her face. The concord of Black Moon was ancient law, binding all werewolf packs to destroy anyone carrying cursed bloodlines. If 3 packs were invoking it. "How long do we have?" Damon asked, his voice deadly calm. "They're demanding an answer by tomorrow night's moon. If you refuse..." Marcus didn't need to finish. Everyone knew what happened to those who violated ancient law. War. "Leave us," Damon commanded. Marcus hesitated. "Your Majesty, perhaps we should consider." "Leave us." The temperature in the chamber seemed to drop 10 degrees. When they were alone again, Luna found her voice. "You have to give me to them." "No. You don't understand. I'm not worth a war. I'm not worth your people dying for some crazy theory about bloodlines and prophecies." Damon stepped closer, close enough that she could see gold flecks in his gray eyes. "You're worth everything, Luna. You just don't know it yet." "How can you say that? You don't even know me." "Don't I?" His hand came up to cup her cheek, and she was too shocked to pull away. "I know you survived 5 years of hell and still have compassion left in your heart. I know you'd rather sacrifice yourself than see others hurt. I know your wolf isn't broken, it's been protecting itself, waiting for the right moment to emerge." Luna's breath caught. "How could you possibly know that?" Damon's thumb traced across her cheekbone, gentle as a whisper. "Because I've been dreaming about you since I was 16 years old. The confession hung between them like a bridge neither was quite ready to cross. Luna felt something shift inside her chest, her wolf, stirring with interest for the first time in years. "That's impossible," she whispered, but she didn't step away from his touch. "A lot of impossible things have been happening lately." His smile was soft, almost sad. Dreams about a girl with mismatched eyes who would change everything. Dreams about silver fire and ancient songs. Dreams about... A sound echoed through the chamber, distant but unmistakable. Howls. Multiple packs, calling for blood. Damon's hand dropped from her face as he turned toward the sound. "They're not waiting until tomorrow night." What does that mean? When he looked at her again, his expression was grimmer than winter. "It means someone doesn't want to give us time to figure out what you're truly capable of." More howls joined the first, closer now. Luna's weak wolf whimpered and tried to hide deeper inside her chest. "Damon," she said, using his name for the first time. "What if they're right? What if I really am dangerous?" He moved toward the passage, then paused to look back at her. In the silver torchlight, he looked like something out of legend himself, a warrior king prepared to face impossible odds. "Luna," he said quietly, "I'm counting on it." As they hurried back through the castle corridors, Luna caught a glimpse of herself in a polished shield hanging on the wall. For just a moment, her reflection looked different, stronger somehow, with silver light flickering behind her mismatched eyes. Almost like she was someone worth 50,000 gold pieces after all. Almost like she was someone worth going to war for. The howls were getting closer. If you are enjoying this video, do well to like this video and subscribe to this channel. Chapter 3. The castle had transformed overnight from sanctuary to fortress under siege. Luna pressed herself against the cold stone wall, watching through the narrow window as torches moved like angry fireflies across the valley below. 3 separate camps, each flying different pack banners, each howling for her blood. She pulled back from the window as an arrow whistled past, embedding itself in the wooden shutters with a solid thunk. Her hands were shaking, had been shaking since dawn, when the first demands for surrender had echoed across the mountainside. "They're not going to stop," she said to the empty chamber. "They'll keep coming until..." "Until what?" Damon's voice made her jump. He stood in the doorway, fully armed now in battle leather that made him look less like a king and more like the weapon of war his reputation claimed he was. "Until I hand you over to people who want you dead?" "Yes." The word came out steadier than she felt. "Because that's the logical thing to do. One life to save hundreds. Your life isn't a bargaining chip, Luna." He crossed to her, his gray eyes fierce in the firelight. "And you're not just one life. You're the key to everything." "I'm nobody," she said, but even as the words left her lips, they felt less true than they had yesterday. Something was stirring inside her, something that had been sleeping for so long she'd forgotten it existed. "I can't even shift properly." "Can't you?" Damon moved closer, and she caught that scent again, pine forests and winter mornings, but underneath it something else. Something that called to parts of her she'd thought were dead. "When was the last time you actually tried?" Luna wrapped her arms around herself. "I don't, it hurts when I try to shift. Has for years. Like something's blocking the connection to my wolf." "Not blocking. Protecting." Damon's voice was gentle now, the way it had been in the hidden chamber. "Your wolf has been shielding itself, waiting for you to be strong enough to handle what you really are." Another arrow struck the shutters. Shouts echoed from the courtyard, Damon's men preparing defenses, servants fleeing to the inner keep. War was coming whether Luna wanted it or not. "Show me," she said suddenly. "What?" "You said I'm the key to everything. You said there are things only I can do. Show me what that means, because right now all I see is a broken Omega who's about to get good people killed." Damon studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Come with me." "But Luna..." He paused at the door. "Once we do this, there's no going back. You'll never be able to pretend you're ordinary again." "Good," Luna said, surprised by the vehemence in her own voice. I'm tired of being ordinary. I'm tired of being afraid. He led her back to the hidden chamber, but this time it wasn't empty. Marcus was there, along with an elderly woman Luna hadn't seen before, small and sharp-eyed, with silver hair braided with what looked like moonstone beads. "This is Vera," Damon said. "She was your grandmother's advisor. One of the few who knew the truth about the Moonfire bloodline." Vera's eyes, pale blue, almost colorless, fixed on Luna with unnerving intensity. "Isadora's blood runs true," she said, her voice carrying the weight of absolute certainty. "But it's been suppressed for so long, this won't be easy, child." "Nothing in my life has been easy," Luna replied. "I'm used to it." Vera's mouth curved in what might have been approval. "Good. You'll need that strength for what comes next." The old woman moved to the pedestal where her grandmother's blade still lay wrapped in silk. But instead of unwrapping it, she began pulling other items from a leather satchel, crystals that caught the torchlight like captured stars, herbs that filled the chamber with the scent of deep forests, and a silver chalice covered in the same symbols that decorated the walls. "The awakening ritual hasn't been performed in over 200 years, Vera said, arranging the items in a careful pattern around the blade. "But the old ways remember, even when we forget." "What does it involve?" Luna asked, though part of her wasn't sure she wanted to know. "Pain," Vera said bluntly. "Your wolf has been caged for so long, breaking free will hurt. But on the other side of that pain..." She gestured to the blade. "Power beyond anything you can imagine." A tremendous crash shook the castle, followed by shouts and the clash of steel on steel. The siege had begun in earnest. "We're out of time," Damon said grimly. "They're not waiting for surrender. They're coming for her now." Vera nodded and began chanting in a language Luna didn't recognize, but that seemed to resonate in her bones. The crystals began to glow with soft silver light, and the air in the chamber grew thick with something that made Luna's skin tingle. "Take the blade," Vera commanded. Luna reached for her grandmother's weapon with trembling fingers. The moment her skin touched the moonstone hilt, pain lanced through her like lightning. But beneath the pain was something else, recognition. The blade knew her, welcomed her, sang with joy at being held by Moonfire hands again. "Good," Vera said, though Luna could barely hear her over the roaring in her ears. "Now, call to your wolf. Not with fear this time, but with command. You are not prey, child. You are the moon's own daughter, and it's time you remembered how to hunt." Luna closed her eyes and reached deep inside herself, past years of terror and suppression, past the voice that whispered she was worthless. Down to the place where her wolf had been hiding, curled up like a wounded animal in the deepest cave of her soul. "Come out," she whispered to it. "It's safe now. It's time." For a moment, nothing happened. Then she felt it, a stirring, a stretching, like something long sleeping beginning to wake. Her wolf raised its head for the first time in years and looked at her with eyes that burned silver. "We are not broken," it said in a voice like moonlight on water. "We never were." Power flooded through Luna like a dam bursting. Silver light exploded from her skin, so bright that everyone in the chamber had to shield their eyes. The blade in her hands sang with harmonics that made the stone walls ring like bells. When the light faded, Luna was still Luna, but changed. Her mismatched eyes now glowed with inner fire, one blue as winter ice, one green as spring forests. Her hair, previously a mousy brown, had darkened to midnight black with threads of silver that caught the light like starfire. And her wolf. Luna could feel it fully for the first time, strong and fierce and utterly, completely hers. "By the old gods," Marcus breathed. "She's beautiful." "She's dangerous," Damon corrected, but his voice held wonder rather than fear. This is what they were so afraid of. Another crash, closer this time. Shouts echoed through the corridors. The enemy had breached the outer defenses. "They're in the castle," Marcus reported, hand on his sword. "Your Majesty, we need to evacuate to the inner keep." "No." Luna's voice had changed too, carrying harmonics that made everyone in the room look at her with startled respect. "No more running. No more hiding. She turned to Damon, the blade steady in her grip. You said I was the key to everything. Show me how to use it. Damon's smile was sharp as winter wind. The Moonfire bloodline doesn't just have power, Luna. You have the ability to see, true sight that cuts through deception and reveals things as they really are. But more than that. He moved closer, and she could see the gold flecks in his eyes were actually glowing now, responding to her awakened power. You can share that sight with others. Show them truth they've been blind to. The pack's outside, Luna said, understanding beginning to dawn. They're not all here by choice, are they? Most of their warriors have no idea why they're really fighting, Vera confirmed. They've been told you're cursed, dangerous, an abomination. But if you could show them the truth. Then we don't have to fight them all, Luna finished. Just the ones actually pulling the strings. The sound of running feet echoed from the corridor outside. Marcus drew his sword, but Luna held up a hand. Let them come, she said. It's time they met the real me. The chamber door burst open and armed warriors poured in, at least a dozen, from different packs judging by their varied armor and weapons. They stopped short when they saw Luna standing in the circle of glowing crystals, her grandmother's blade catching the light like captured moonbeams. Surrender the abomination, their leader snarled, though Luna noticed his voice shook slightly. Hand her over and King Blackthorn's life will be spared. I have a better idea, Luna said calmly. Look at me. Really look, with eyes unclouded by lies. She reached out with her newly awakened power, silver light flowing from her like water. It touched each warrior in turn, and Luna saw the moment truth broke through whatever compulsion had been laid on them. Their expressions changed from hatred to confusion to dawning horror. What have we done? One of them whispered, dropping his sword. We came here to kill a child. An innocent. Not innocent, Luna corrected gently. But not evil either. Just someone who was told she was worthless so many times she almost believed it. The leader of the group, a scarred veteran with lieutenant's marks, looked around at his men in growing panic. No. No, you don't understand. She's dangerous. She has to die, or everything will. Everything will what? Damon stepped forward, and his voice carried the full weight of royal authority. Finish that sentence, Lieutenant. Or better yet, tell me who really sent you here. The man's face went pale. I can't. You can't, or you won't. Luna moved closer, letting her power wash over him like silver fire. What are you so afraid of that you'd kill an innocent to prevent it? For a moment, the lieutenant's eyes cleared completely, and Luna saw him for what he was, a good man, a loyal soldier, twisted by forces he didn't understand. But then something else flickered across his features, something cold and alien, and he lunged for her with a hidden knife. Damon moved faster than thought, his sword taking the man's head from his shoulders before the blade could reach Luna. The lieutenant's body hit the stone floor with a wet thud, but as he died, something escaped from his mouth, a wisp of shadow that dissipated like smoke. Possession magic, Vera said grimly. Someone's been controlling their leaders, using them as puppets. Then the real enemy isn't out there, Luna realized. They're already inside, aren't they? Before anyone could answer, Marcus spoke from the doorway. Your Majesty. You need to see this. They followed him to the main hall, where bodies lay scattered across the floor, Damon's loyal guards, cut down by someone they'd trusted. And there, standing over the carnage with blood on his sword and satisfaction in his eyes, was someone Luna recognized from the portrait gallery. Alpha Raymond Killian. The man who'd served as her father's trusted advisor. The man who'd been present the night her parents died. Hello, little Luna, he said, his voice carrying mock warmth that made her skin crawl. My, how you've grown. Though I suppose that won't matter for much longer. He wasn't alone. Behind him stood 24 warriors bearing the marks of the Iron Circle, the secret society Vera had whispered about, the ones who'd made it their mission to eliminate bloodlines like hers. Time to finish what we started 20 years ago, Raymond continued, raising his blade. Though I admit, I'm curious to see if the awakened Moonfire heir bleeds the same color as her parents did. Luna felt her newly awakened power surge in response to his words, silver fire dancing along her grandmother's blade. Her wolf snarled with barely contained fury. But before she could respond, footsteps echoed from behind them. More warriors, dozens of them, flooding into the hall from every entrance. They were surrounded, outnumbered, with nowhere to run. Raymond's smile widened to show teeth. Did you really think awakening her powers would be enough? The Iron Circle has been planning this for decades. Every possible escape route is blocked. Every ally you might have called upon is already dead. He raised his sword, and the silver blade caught the torchlight like captured lightning. Welcome to your ending, little moon goddess. I hope it hurts as much as your father's did. If you are enjoying this video, do well to like this video and subscribe to this channel. Chapter 4. The Great Hall of Blackthorn Castle had become a killing ground, and Luna stood at its heart like the eye of a silver storm. Her grandmother's blade hummed with power in her grip, responding to the fury that coursed through her awakened blood. Around her, Alpha Raymond Killian's Iron Circle warriors closed in like wolves scenting wounded prey. 20 years, Raymond mused, circling her with predatory patience. 20 years I've wondered if Isadora's granddaughter would prove as troublesome as her bloodline suggested. Your father certainly caused us considerable inconvenience before we silenced him. Luna's wolf snarled within her chest, silver fire dancing along her skin. You killed them. You killed my parents and let me think my father was a traitor. Oh, he was a traitor, Raymond laughed, the sound echoing off the stone walls like breaking glass. A traitor to the natural order. Did you know he actually believed werewolves should bow to creatures like you? To the old bloodlines, the divine lineages that ruled us for centuries before we had the sense to rise up. You mean before you murdered them? Damon snarled from beside her. Luna could feel the heat radiating from him, his own power responding to hers in ways that made the air shimmer. We liberated ourselves, Raymond corrected smoothly. And we've spent the last 2 centuries ensuring that liberation remained permanent. The Moonfire line was supposed to have died with Queen Isadora. Imagine our surprise when reports began filtering in about a girl with heterochromatic eyes being sold at auction after auction, always returned as defective. Luna felt sick. You've been tracking me this whole time? Of course. Though I must admit, you were so pathetically weak for so long, we began to wonder if we were mistaken. Perhaps the bloodline had finally been diluted enough to be harmless. His eyes glittered with malicious amusement. But then King Blackthorn here had to go and awaken you. Rather inconvenient timing, really. The Iron Circle warriors tightened their formation. Luna counted at least 30, all bearing weapons that gleamed with silver inlay, designed specifically to wound creatures with divine blood. Her awakened senses could smell the enchantments on the blades, magic meant to cut through supernatural defenses like they were paper. Surrender now, Raymond continued, and I'll make it quick. The ritual requires your blood, but it doesn't specify that you need to be conscious when we drain it. What ritual? Luna demanded, though part of her was afraid she already knew. The same one your fool ancestors used to bond bloodlines, but reversed. Your Moonfire blood, drained at the moment of your death, will transfer your power to me. I'll become what you were meant to be, a god among wolves. Raymond's smile turned feral. Only I'll use that power properly. No more hiding, no more pretending to be equals with lesser beings. The strong will rule, as nature intended. Luna raised her blade, silver light cascading from her like liquid starfire. Over my dead body. That's rather the point, Raymond said pleasantly, then nodded to his warriors. Take her. Try not to damage her too badly, we need her alive for the ceremony. The Iron Circle attacked as one, a coordinated assault that spoke of years of training. But Luna was no longer the broken Omega they'd expected to face. Her awakened wolf guided her movements with predatory grace, and her grandmother's blade sang as it met steel. The first warrior to reach her screamed as her Moonfire-enhanced blade cut through his enchanted sword like it was made of tin. Silver light exploded from the wound, and he collapsed, writhing as divine fire burned through his veins. She's stronger than we anticipated, one of them shouted. Then use the nets. Raymond barked. Bring her down. Weighted nets flew through the air, not ordinary rope, but strands woven with silver wire and inscribed with binding runes. Luna slashed at them with her blade, but there were too many, coming from too many directions. The first net caught her left arm, the silver burning through her awakened defenses like acid. She cried out, stumbling, and 2 more nets followed. The binding runes flared to life the moment they touched her skin, sending waves of paralyzing pain through her nervous system. Luna. Damon's roar shook the stones of the castle as he fought his way toward her, cutting down Iron Circle warriors with savage efficiency. But Raymond had planned for this too. Half his force peeled off to engage the Alpha King, keeping him away from Luna as more nets found their mark. Clever girl, Raymond said approvingly as Luna collapsed to one knee, her movements growing sluggish as the binding magic took hold. But cleverness only goes so far against proper preparation. Through the haze of pain, Luna saw Vera pressed against the far wall, the elderly woman's eyes wide with horror. Marcus was down, blood pooling beneath his still form. And Damon was fighting like a man possessed, but even he couldn't cut through a dozen warriors fast enough to reach her. You want to know the best part? Raymond knelt beside her, well out of range of her blade. Your precious Alpha King isn't even here by accident. Oh, he thinks he's been having prophetic dreams about you, but those visions were our gift. We needed someone to awaken your power for us, you see. Someone strong enough to break through your natural defenses but foolish enough to believe he was saving you. You're lying, Luna gasped, though ice was forming in her chest. Am I? How else would he have known to bid on you at that particular auction? How else would he have recognized what you were? Raymond's voice was poison sweet. We've been manipulating him for months, feeding him dreams and visions, guiding him to you like a hound following a scent trail. Luna's eyes found Damon across the chaotic battle. For just a moment, their gazes met, and she saw something flicker in his expression: doubt, confusion, the terrible possibility that he'd been played for a fool. That moment of distraction cost him. An iron circle blade found the gap in his defenses, sliding between his ribs with a wet sound that made Luna's heart stop. Damon staggered, crimson spreading across his leather armor. No. The word tore from Luna's throat like a physical thing, silver fire exploding outward in a wave that sent several warriors flying. But the binding nets held, the runes flaring brighter as they fed off her own power to strengthen their hold. Touching, Raymond observed. But ultimately pointless. Seize the king, we'll need him for the secondary ritual. Luna watched in helpless fury as Damon was overwhelmed and dragged down. The wound in his side was bleeding freely, and his movements were growing weaker. Soon, Iron Circle warriors had him bound with the same silver wire nets that held her. What secondary ritual? Luna demanded, though she dreaded the answer. Did you think you were the only divine bloodline we've been tracking? Raymond's smile was all teeth. Your boyfriend there isn't just any Alpha King. The Blackthorn line carries sun god blood, diluted over the centuries, but still potent enough for our purposes. Luna felt the world tilt around her. That's impossible. Is it? Haven't you felt the resonance between your powers? Haven't you noticed how your abilities amplify each other's? Raymond gestured to his warriors, who began dragging both captives toward the great doors. The prophecies spoke of sun and moon united, but they never specified that union had to be willing. Your combined blood will make me more powerful than any creature that's ever walked this earth. They were hauled through corridors Luna had walked freely just hours before, past the bodies of servants and guards who died trying to protect their home. The casual cruelty of it made her sick, so many lives snuffed out for one madman's ambition. Where are you taking us? She asked, though speaking sent waves of agony through her body. The binding nets were designed to cause pain, to weaken their captives through constant suffering. Somewhere with the proper ritual circles, Raymond replied. Your grandmother's hidden chamber served its purpose for awakening your power, but for what comes next, we need older magic. Stronger containment. They emerged from the castle into the cold mountain air. Dawn was breaking over the peaks, painting the sky in shades of rose and gold that mocked the darkness of Luna's situation. 3-pack armies were indeed camped in the valley below, but now she could see they weren't all willing participants. Many bore the glazed expressions of men under magical compulsion, they were subsumed to serve the Iron Circle's agenda. But it was their destination that made Luna's blood run cold. High above them, carved into the living rock of the mountain peak, stood an ancient stone circle. Even at this distance, she could feel the malevolent power radiating from it, old magic, the kind that predated civilization and morality in equal measure. The sundering circle, Vera breathed from somewhere behind them. Luna hadn't realized the old woman was still alive, much less being dragged along as well. They mean to use the sundering circle. What is that? Luna asked, though part of her already knew she wouldn't like the answer. Where the original moon and sun god bloodlines were first separated, Vera's voice was heavy with dread. Where the divine essence was torn apart and scattered to prevent any single being from wielding both aspects of celestial power. And where we're going to reverse that process, Raymond added cheerfully. Your deaths at the center of that circle will reunify the scattered essence, but instead of creating a balanced deity, all that power will flow into me. The last piece of a plan we've been crafting for over a century. As they began the treacherous climb up the mountain path, Luna caught Damon's eye. He was pale from blood loss, weakened by his wounds and the binding nets, but his gray eyes still held that steel she'd come to recognize. I'm sorry, he mouthed, and she knew he was thinking about Raymond's claims that his dreams had been manipulated. Luna shook her head slightly. It didn't matter how he'd found her. What mattered was that he'd given her a chance to discover who she really was. Even if it all ended here, at least she would die as herself, not as the broken, worthless Omega the world had tried to convince her she was. But as they climbed higher and the sundering circle grew larger above them, Luna felt something stirring deep in her chest. Her wolf was injured but not defeated, and her awakened power hadn't been fully tapped. The binding nets were strong, but they were designed to contain the Moonfire bloodline as it had existed centuries ago. They had never been tested against someone who'd spent 5 years learning to endure the unendurable, who'd survived hell through sheer stubborn refusal to break completely. Luna began to smile, an expression that probably looked more than a little unhinged given their circumstances. Raymond and his Iron Circle had made one critical error in their planning. They'd assumed that because she'd been weak before, she would remain weak now. They were about to learn just how wrong they could be. The sundering circle loomed above them, its ancient stones seeming to drink in the morning light. But Luna's smile only widened as she felt her power beginning to build again, silver fire gathering in the depths of her soul like a storm preparing to break. Let them try their ritual, she thought grimly. Let them see what happens when they try to drain a goddess who's finally remembered how to fight back. If you are enjoying this video, do well to like this video and subscribe to this channel. Chapter 5. The sundering circle was older than memory, its 13 towering stones arranged in perfect symmetry around a raised altar that had been carved from a single piece of black granite. Each stone bore symbols that seemed to shift and writhe in Luna's peripheral vision, ancient magic made manifest in carved rock that thrummed with malevolent power. Luna's bare feet touched the cursed ground and she gasped. The mountain peak had been hollowed out into a natural amphitheater, with the circle at its heart like a wound in the world itself. The stones rose 30 feet into the air, their surfaces slick with what looked like centuries of dried blood. Magnificent, isn't it? Raymond gestured broadly as his warriors dragged Luna and Damon toward the center altar. Built by the first generation of our kind, back when they still believed gods should rule over mortals. This is where the original sun and moon deities were torn apart, their essence scattered to prevent anyone from achieving that level of power again. Vera was forced to her knees at the circle's edge, her ancient eyes wide with horror. You don't understand what you're doing, she called out. The sundering circle doesn't just separate divine essence, it devours it. Nothing good has ever come from blood spilled on that altar. Good is relative, Raymond replied pleasantly. He nodded to his men, who began hauling Luna onto the altar itself. The moment her body touched the black granite, agony shot through her like lightning. The stone was hungry, she realized with dawning terror. It had been feeding on divine blood for millennia, and it recognized her for what she was. The ritual is quite elegant, really, Raymond continued, pulling a ceremonial dagger from his robes. The blade was obsidian, carved with the same shifting symbols that decorated the stones, and it seemed to drink in the early morning light. Your blood, spilled at the moment of your death, will call to the scattered fragments of moon god essence. They'll attempt to reunify with your dying body, but the circle will redirect that power into me instead. Luna tested her bonds, but the silver wire nets had been supplemented with chains forged from the same hungry stone as the altar. Every movement sent fresh waves of pain through her body, and she could feel her strength being slowly drained by the malevolent magic. And then, she managed to gasp. Then we repeat the process with your sun god lover. Raymond smiled down at Damon, who was being chained to a secondary altar 20 feet away. Two divine essences, reunified in a single mortal form. I'll become what the old gods were before they grew weak and complacent. Damon raised his head with visible effort, blood from his wounds staining the stone beneath him. You'll become nothing but a monster drunk on stolen power. And it will destroy you from the inside out. Perhaps. But what a glorious destruction it will be. Raymond raised the obsidian blade, and Luna could see her own terrified reflection in its dark surface. Though I admit, I'm curious to see if the awakened Moonfire heir will die as easily as her parents did. The mention of her parents sent rage coursing through Luna's veins like liquid fire. Her wolf snarled within her chest, no longer cowering but gathering itself for one final, desperate assault against their bonds. My parents died protecting people like you, Luna spat. They died believing in something better than this, than using power to crush the weak. They died because they were fools, Raymond corrected. Your father actually thought he could expose our organization, rally the other packs against us. He died begging for your mother's life, you know. Very touching, if ultimately pointless. Luna felt something crack inside her chest, not breaking, but transforming. The constant pain from the binding magic, the horror of watching good people die for her sake, the grinding fury at decades of injustice, it all coalesced into something hard and bright and infinitely dangerous. Her grandmother's blade, confiscated when they'd been captured, lay on a stone table 20 feet away. Too far to reach. But as Luna stared at it, she realized distance might not matter. The weapon had recognized her blood, had bonded with her awakened power. And the connection between them was still there, thrumming like a plucked harp string. Come to me, she whispered in her mind, reaching out with senses she was only beginning to understand. The blade trembled on its stone resting place. Raymond didn't notice, he was too busy arranging ceremonial bowls around Luna's altar, each one inscribed with symbols that hurt to look at directly. But Damon saw, his gray eyes widening with something that might have been hope. The old texts say the ritual must be performed at the moment of greatest despair, Raymond mused, testing the edge of his obsidian dagger. When the victim has lost all hope, all will to resist. That's when the divine essence is most vulnerable to extraction. Luna almost laughed. Greatest despair? She'd lived with despair for 5 years, had carried it like a faithful companion through auction after auction, through nights when she'd wondered if dying might be easier than another day of being unwanted. This man thought he could break her with a little pain and some theatrical cruelty. He had no idea what she'd already survived. Come to me, she called again, and this time her grandmother's blade responded. It rose from the stone table with liquid grace, floating through the air like it weighed nothing at all. Several Iron Circle warriors shouted in alarm, but the weapon was already moving too fast to intercept. It settled into Luna's chained hands with a sensation like coming home. The moment her fingers closed around the moonstone hilt, silver fire exploded from her body in a wave that sent Raymond staggering backward. The hungry stones of the circle shrieked, actually shrieked, as her awakened power clashed with their ancient malevolence. Impossible, Raymond snarled, raising his obsidian dagger. The binding magic should prevent you from accessing your power. Your binding magic was designed to hold the old Moonfire bloodline, Luna replied, her voice carrying harmonics that made the very air ring like a struck bell. But I'm not just Moonfire anymore, am I? She could feel it now, the connection Damon had spoken of, the resonance between their bloodlines. His sun god heritage was awakening in response to her power, golden light beginning to emanate from his chained form. Their abilities weren't just complementary, they were two halves of a greater whole, and proximity was causing them to merge in ways the ancient texts had never anticipated. The ritual, Raymond breathed, his eyes wide with sudden understanding. You're triggering the bonding ritual on your own. Not the bonding, Luna corrected, silver fire cascading from her skin as the chains holding her began to crack. The completion. What sun and moon were always meant to become. She slashed upward with her grandmother's blade, the moonfire-enhanced edge cutting through stone chains like they were made of paper. Silver and gold lights swirled together in the air above the altar, creating patterns that hurt to look at but filled Luna with indescribable joy. Raymond lunged forward with his obsidian dagger, but Luna was no longer where he expected her to be. 5 years of avoiding violence had taught her to move like smoke, to be elsewhere when the blow fell. She rolled off the altar and came up in a crouch, her grandmother's blade weaving a defensive pattern that turned the hungry air of the sundering circle into a symphony of silver light. Kill them both. Raymond roared to his warriors. The ritual can work with their corpses if necessary. Iron Circle fighters poured into the circle from all sides, their enchanted weapons gleaming with malevolent purpose. But as they crossed the threshold into the sacred space, something unexpected happened. The sundering circle, designed to tear apart divine essence, began to react to the combined power radiating from Luna and Damon. The ancient stones started to crack, their malevolent magic turning inward as it encountered forces it couldn't separate or devour. The circle's destabilizing, one of the warriors shouted. The magic is turning. His words were cut off as the stone beneath his feet crumbled, sending him plummeting into a crevasse that opened like a hungry mouth. The sundering circle, fed on centuries of stolen divine blood, was beginning to consume itself in the presence of power it couldn't corrupt. Luna felt Damon break free of his own chains, golden sunfire blazing from his wounds as his sun-god heritage fully awakened. He moved with inhuman grace, his sword appearing in his hand as if called from the ether itself. Together, they stood back to back at the center of the disintegrating circle, silver and gold lights swirling around them like a protective storm. The Iron Circle warriors hesitated, suddenly uncertain. This wasn't the desperate last stand they'd expected. This was two awakened deities preparing to remind the world why gods had once been feared. You want divine blood? Luna called to Raymond, her voice carrying across the chaos as stones continued to crack and crumble. Come and take it. Raymond's face twisted with fury and desperation. The plan he'd spent decades crafting was falling apart around him, but he still had one card to play. He raised the obsidian dagger above his head and began chanting in the old tongue, calling upon the circle's malevolent power one final time. The remaining stones flared to life, their carved symbols burning like brands against the morning sky. The hungry altar beneath Luna's feet began to pulse with renewed appetite, and she felt her strength being pulled toward it like iron filings to a magnet. If I cannot have your power willingly, Raymond snarled, his voice distorted by the dark magic flowing through him, then I'll take it as you die. The obsidian blade in his hand began to grow, fed by the circle's malevolent essence until it was less weapon than force of nature, a shard of crystallized despair that could cut through anything, even divine flesh. Luna felt Damon's hand close around hers, their fingers intertwining as their combined power reached a crescendo. Silver and gold light merged into something new, something that had never existed before in the history of the world. Together? Damon asked, his gray eyes reflecting both their fires. Together, Luna agreed. And as Raymond lunged forward with his reality-cutting blade, as the sundering circle's stones began to topple like ancient trees, as the mountain itself started to shake apart beneath the weight of unleashed divine power, Luna finally understood what she was meant to become. Not just moon goddess. Not just the last of her bloodline. But something entirely new, a fusion of celestial forces that would either save the world or destroy it completely. The obsidian dagger swept toward her heart, hungry for divine blood. Luna smiled and let her true power answer. Chapter 6, The Bonding. The obsidian blade never reached Luna's heart. In the instant before Raymond's reality-cutting dagger could pierce her flesh, something unprecedented happened. The merged silver and gold light surrounding Luna and Damon suddenly collapsed inward, creating a protective barrier that turned the hungry weapon to ash the moment it made contact. Raymond staggered backward, staring at his empty hand in shock. That's not possible. Nothing can destroy a sundering blade. Nothing mortal, Luna corrected, her voice carrying harmonics that made the crumbling stones ring like cathedral bells. She could feel the change happening inside her, not just the awakening of her moonfire heritage, but something far more profound. Her very essence was shifting, expanding, becoming something the ancient texts had only hinted at in their most cryptic passages. The mountain peak shook again, more violently this time. Great chunks of stone fell from the dying circle, and crevasses opened in the ground like gaping wounds. The sundering circle, fed on stolen divine blood for millennia, was consuming itself as it encountered power it couldn't corrupt or contain. "We have to get out of here," Damon said, his golden sun god aura flickering as he fought to maintain his footing on the disintegrating altar. "The whole mountain is coming apart." But Luna wasn't listening. She could hear something else, a voice that seemed to come from the very stones beneath her feet, from the wind howling between the toppling pillars, from the silver light that flowed through her veins like liquid starfire. "The bonding isn't complete," the voice whispered. "Without the union of sun and moon, both bloodlines will consume their vessels. You have minutes, not hours." "Luna." Damon's shout cut through her mystical trance. "What's wrong?" She turned to look at him, really look, and saw what the voice meant. Golden light was bleeding from his wounds like liquid fire, and his face was pale with more than just blood loss. His sun god heritage, fully awakened but without its lunar counterpart to balance it, was burning him alive from the inside out. And she could feel the same thing beginning to happen to her. The silver fire in her veins was growing hotter, hungrier, threatening to consume her mortal flesh like kindling. "The bonding," she gasped. "We have to complete the bonding ritual, or we're both going to die." Raymond, forgotten in the chaos, let out a bark of bitter laughter. "Even if you knew how, you don't have time. The proper ceremony takes hours, requires specific alignments of celestial bodies, sacred oils, ceremonial." "We don't need ceremony," Luna interrupted, sudden understanding flooding through her like dawn breaking. "We need choice. Free will. The thing your manipulations could never provide." She took Damon's hand, ignoring the way their merged auras sent shockwaves through the dying circle. Around them, the remaining Iron Circle warriors were fleeing as the mountain continued to tear itself apart. Only Vera remained, the old woman somehow maintaining her footing as she watched with eyes full of wonder and terror. "Luna, what are you doing?" Damon's voice was strained. She could see the effort it took him to remain conscious as divine fire ravaged his mortal frame. "What should have been done centuries ago," she replied. "Before fear and politics tore the bloodlines apart. Before people like Raymond decided gods were too dangerous to exist." She pressed their joined hands to her heart, feeling the silver fire respond to his golden light like recognition itself. The prophecies were wrong. They said sun and moon would unite to rule over others. But that was never what the power was for. Then what? His question was cut off as Luna leaned forward and kissed him. It wasn't romantic, wasn't gentle or tentative or any of the things first kisses were supposed to be. It was desperate and necessary and charged with enough divine energy to level a city. The moment their lips touched, reality rewrote itself around them. Silver and gold light exploded outward in a sphere of pure celestial power that stopped the mountain's collapse, that turned falling stones to drifting feathers, that reached into the scattered essence of ancient gods and called it home. Luna felt Damon's sun god heritage merge with her moonfire blood, two incomplete halves finally becoming whole. But it wasn't absorption or dominance, it was true union, each bloodline maintaining its unique nature while gaining strength from the other. The pain of divine fire consuming mortal flesh vanished, replaced by a sense of completeness Luna had never imagined possible. She was still herself, still the girl who'd survived 5 years of auction blocks and casual cruelty. But now she was also something more, a being of balanced power, moon and sun unified in harmony rather than opposition. When they broke apart, the sundering circle had gone silent. The ancient stones stood whole again, but their malevolent aura had been replaced by something cleaner. The altar beneath their feet had transformed from hungry black granite to white marble that gleamed with inner light. Impossible, Raymond whispered from where he'd fallen to his knees at the circle's edge. The sundering circle can't be purified. It's fed on divine blood for too long, become too corrupt. It was never corrupt, Luna said gently, stepping down from the altar with fluid grace. Her appearance had changed, her hair now pure silver white, her mismatched eyes glowing with soft inner fire. It was starving. For millennia, it's been fed stolen power, torn essence, the bitter dregs of murdered gods. But now... She gestured to the transformed circle, where silver and gold light played between the stones like aurora made solid. Now it remembers what it was meant to be. A place of union, not separation. Of creation, not destruction. Damon joined her, his own transformation equally profound. His dark hair now held threads of gold, and his gray eyes burned with solar fire. But like Luna, he remained fundamentally himself, just expanded, completed, made whole. The prophecies, Vera breathed from the circle's edge. They spoke of the end of the old world when sun and moon united. But they never said what would come after. Something better, Luna replied. She could feel it now, not just her own power, but the potential for healing that flowed through the transformed circle. The ability to mend what had been broken, to restore what had been lost, to offer redemption even to those who had fallen furthest into darkness. She turned to Raymond, who was staring at them with a mixture of fear and desperate hunger. Even now, even with his plans in ruins around him, he couldn't let go of his desire for the power they represented. It doesn't have to end this way, she said softly. The offer is still open. What offer? Redemption. The chance to choose something better than the hatred that's consumed your life. Luna extended her hand toward him, silver light dancing around her fingers like tame lightning. The sundering circle can heal what's been broken inside you, burn away the poison that's twisted your thoughts. But only if you choose it freely. For a moment, hope flickered in Raymond's eyes. Luna saw the man he might have been underneath decades of accumulated bitterness, someone who genuinely believed he was protecting his people from divine tyranny, who'd convinced himself that any atrocity was justified if it prevented a return to the old ways. But then his face hardened, and that brief glimpse of possibility vanished like smoke. I'll never bow to abominations like you, he snarled, producing a silver dagger from his robes, the last of his weapons, its blade inscribed with killing runes. If I can't steal your power, I'll at least have the satisfaction of watching you bleed. He lunged forward with surprising speed for a man his age, the enchanted blade aimed at Luna's heart. But Damon was faster, his sword materializing in his hand as golden fire blazed around him. The two blades met with a sound like breaking crystal, silver runes flaring and dying as they encountered purified sun god power. Raymond's dagger shattered, leaving him holding nothing but a worthless hilt. It's over, Raymond, Damon said quietly. Your weapons are useless against us now. Your warriors have fled. Your circle is broken. He lowered his sword, offering mercy even in victory. Surrender, and we'll find a way to heal what's been done to you. Raymond laughed, the sound bitter as winter wind. Heal me? I don't want to be healed. I want to watch the world burn before I'll see it ruled by creatures like you again. He pulled something from his robes, a small crystal vial filled with swirling darkness. Luna recognized it immediately, concentrated sundering magic, the distilled essence of the circle's former corruption. If I drink this, it will kill me, Raymond said conversationally. But it will also turn my death into a weapon. My life force, corrupted by concentrated malevolence, will seek out the nearest divine essence and attempt to poison it. His smile was all teeth. Even if it can't kill you both, it might be enough to drive you mad. To turn your precious union into a curse that destroys everything you touch. Don't do this, Luna pleaded. It doesn't have to end this way. Yes, it does. Raymond raised the vial toward his lips. Because I'd rather die than live in a world where gods walk among mortals again. But before he could drink the concentrated poison, another voice cut through the morning air. I wouldn't do that if I were you. Everyone turned to see Marcus limping up the mountain path, his armor torn and bloodied but his eyes blazing with grim satisfaction. Behind him came a sight that made Luna's heart soar, dozens of warriors, but not Iron Circle forces. These bore the banners of the packs that had been under magical compulsion, now freed from the spells that had bound them. Your little organization is finished, Raymond, Marcus continued. When the compulsion magic broke, your allies remembered what they'd been forced to do. They're not very happy about it. The freed warriors spread out around the circle, surrounding the few remaining Iron Circle loyalists with calm professionalism. Their leader, a scarred veteran with lieutenant's marks, stepped forward and saluted Damon. Your Majesty. My men and I owe you an apology. We came here under false pretenses, our minds clouded by foreign magic. If you'll have us, we'd like to make amends by ensuring this never happens again. Raymond stared at the assembled forces, at the crumbling remnants of his centuries-old conspiracy, at the transformed circle that had turned his greatest weapon into a beacon of hope. The crystal vial in his hand began to tremble. This isn't over, he whispered. There are others. The Iron Circle has roots in every major pack, agents in positions of power across the continent. Even if you've defeated me, the ideology will survive. Then we'll face it when it comes, Luna said firmly. But we'll face it together. Sun and moon united, mortal and divine working in harmony instead of fear. She could feel it beginning already, the ripples of change spreading out from their transformed bonding. The artificial separation between divine and mortal bloodlines was breaking down, not through conquest or force, but through choice. The choice to trust, to hope, to believe that power shared was stronger than power hoarded. Raymond looked at the vial in his hand one last time, then let it fall to shatter on the white marble of the transformed altar. The concentrated sundering magic hissed and bubbled as it touched the purified stone, then dissolved into harmless smoke. I won't give you the satisfaction of martyrdom, he said quietly. But I won't serve you either. The world will have to judge for itself whether your pretty words match your actions. As the sun climbed higher over the transformed sundering circle, Luna felt the first stirrings of true hope she'd known since childhood. The bonding was complete, the immediate threat ended. But more than that, she could sense the potential for something genuinely new, a world where strength served justice, where power lifted up rather than crushed down. It wouldn't be easy. Centuries of mistrust and fear couldn't be overcome overnight. But standing there with Damon's hand in hers, surrounded by allies who'd chosen to believe in something better, Luna thought they might actually have a chance. The bonding isn't just complete, she realized. It's just the beginning. If you are enjoying this video, do well to like this video and subscribe to this channel. Chapter 7. 3 days after the bonding, Luna stood in the ruins of what had once been Blackthorn Castle's great hall and tried not to let the devastation break her heart. Bodies lay scattered across the stone floor like discarded dolls, servants who'd greeted her with shy smiles, guards who'd nodded respectfully as she passed, the cook who'd insisted on sending extra portions to her room because she was too thin for a proper young lady. All dead. All killed in the Iron Circle's final gambit while she and Damon had been trapped on the mountain. 43 confirmed casualties, Marcus reported grimly, his own wounds still visible despite the healing they'd done. Including young Pip. Luna closed her eyes against the wave of grief that threatened to overwhelm her. Pip had been barely 16, an Omega servant who'd worked in the castle kitchens and always had a ready smile despite her humble station. She died clutching a kitchen knife, apparently trying to defend the other servants from Iron Circle warriors. How? Luna's voice came out as barely a whisper. They came in the night, 3 hours after you were taken, Marcus continued. Professional killers, not the compelled warriors we faced on the mountain. These knew exactly what they were doing, eliminate anyone who might support you, destroy any safe haven you might return to. Damon's jaw was set in lines that could have been carved from granite. Survivors? Some. The stable boys had sense enough to flee when the attack started. A few of the younger maids hid in the wine cellars until it was over. Marcus's expression darkened. But the message was clear enough. Anyone who stands with you dies. Luna felt the silver fire in her veins respond to her fury, and for a moment the ruined hall filled with moonlight bright enough to banish shadows. The power that had felt so right, so natural during the bonding ceremony now seemed almost too much to contain. She was stronger than she'd ever imagined possible, but strength couldn't bring back the dead. "They want us to run," she said, her voice carrying harmonics that made the broken stones ring like bells. "They're trying to isolate us, make us afraid to form connections with anyone." "Smart strategy," Damon acknowledged, golden light beginning to dance around his fingers in response to her power. "But they've made one critical error." "What's that?" His smile was sharp as a blade's edge. "They've given us nothing left to lose." A commotion from the courtyard interrupted them, the sound of many feet, voices raised in urgent conversation. Luna and Damon exchanged glances before moving to the shattered windows that overlooked the castle's main entrance. What they saw made Luna's breath catch in her throat. Hundreds of people were streaming through the broken gates, not warriors this time, but refugees. Families with children, elderly pack members leaning on walking sticks, injured fighters supported by their comrades. They bore the banners of at least a dozen different packs, all moving together in a great exodus that filled the courtyard to overflowing. "What's happening?" Luna asked. Marcus appeared at her shoulder, his expression grim. Word spread about what really happened on the mountain. About the Iron Circle's true agenda, about the compulsion magic they used to turn pack against pack. He paused, watching as more refugees continued to arrive. "The ones who resisted are being hunted. Their homes burned, their leaders executed as traitors." Luna felt something cold settle in her stomach. "They're creating a war." "No," Damon corrected quietly. "They're finishing one that's been going on for centuries. The only difference is now it's out in the open." A familiar figure emerged from the crowd of refugees, Lieutenant Garrett, the scarred veteran who'd helped free the compelled warriors. He climbed the broken steps to the great hall with visible effort, his left arm hanging useless at his side. "Your Majesties," he said, offering a precise military salute despite his injuries. "I bring word from the resistance leaders." "Resistance?" Luna asked. "Every pack that rejected Iron Circle ideology. Every leader who refused to hunt innocent families. Every warrior who chose conscience over orders." Garrett's eyes were hard as winter stone. "We've been organizing while you were indisposed. Gathering intelligence, making contact with like-minded groups." He pulled a rolled map from his pack, spreading it across a makeshift table formed from fallen stones. Red marks dotted the parchment like drops of blood, concentrated in certain regions. "Iron Circle strongholds," Garrett explained. "They're not hiding anymore. Open recruitment, public rallies, mass executions of anyone they deem corrupted by divine sympathy." His finger traced lines connecting the red marks. "They're calling it the Great Purification. Their goal is to eliminate every bloodline with even a trace of divine heritage." Luna studied the map with growing horror. The red marks covered nearly half the continent. "How many people are we talking about?" "Hundreds of thousands, if their rhetoric is accurate. They're casting a wide net, anyone with unusual abilities, anyone from bloodlines that trace back to the old divine families, anyone who's ever shown them sympathy." Garrett's voice was steady, but Luna could see the fury burning in his eyes. "They mean to finish what they started centuries ago." Damon leaned over the map, his expression calculating. "Defensive positions? Here, here, and here." Garrett marked 3 locations with quick slashes of his pen. "Natural choke points, defensible terrain." "But Your Majesty." He hesitated. "We're vastly outnumbered. The Iron Circle has been planning this for decades. They have superior weapons, better organization, and the advantage of surprise." "What about allies?" Luna asked. "Other kingdoms, neighboring territories? Either already fallen or staying neutral. No one wants to risk Iron Circle retaliation." Garrett's smile was bitter. "Except for one group." He added another mark to the map, this one in blue. "The outcasts." Luna frowned. "I don't understand." "Every Omega who was cast out for being defective. Every warrior deemed unfit for service. Every person the established packs discarded as worthless." Garrett's eyes found Luna's, and she saw recognition there. They're rallying to your banner, Your Majesty. Calling you the Omega Queen, the one who proves that broken things can become beautiful again. The title hit Luna like a physical blow. She'd spent so many years being told she was worthless, unwanted, a burden no pack would willingly bear. And now? How many? Damon asked quietly. Thousands, with more arriving every day. They're not professional soldiers, but they're motivated in ways the Iron Circle can't match. Garrett folded the map carefully. They've lost everything to the established order. They have nothing left to lose and everything to gain. Luna walked to the broken window again, looking out at the refugees still streaming through the gates. Children who'd never known safety, elders cast out by families who saw them as burdens, warriors scarred by battles they'd fought for people who'd never valued them. Her people. The forgotten ones, the discarded ones, the ones society had labeled as broken. When do we fight? She asked. Luna, Damon said carefully. We don't have to do this. We could disappear, find somewhere remote to build a new life. Our power is strong enough now to protect ourselves even if we can't save everyone else. She turned to look at him, this man who'd spent 50,000 gold pieces on a girl nobody wanted, who'd risked everything to help her discover who she really was. His golden eyes held love and concern in equal measure, but underneath it all was the same steel that had made him a king. Could you live with that? She asked quietly. Could you be happy knowing we ran while innocent people died? Damon was quiet for a long moment, then shook his head. No. I couldn't. Then we fight. Luna looked back at the map, at the red marks that represented death and destruction spreading across the continent like a plague. We gather everyone who's willing to stand against them. We make our stand at the Valley of Howls, where the last great war was fought. And we remind the world that power shared is stronger than power hoarded. The Valley of Howls? Marcus looked up sharply. Your Majesty, that's, the terrain there is terrible for defense. Wide open, nowhere to retreat to if things go badly. Exactly. Luna's smile was sharp as starlight. We're not planning to retreat. Garrett straightened, something like hope flickering in his battle-hardened features. Your orders, Your Majesty. Send word to every pack, every kingdom, every group that's ever been told they don't matter. Tell them the Omega Queen is calling. Luna felt her power rising, silver fire dancing along her skin as her voice carried to every corner of the ruined hall. Tell them it's time to choose what kind of world we're going to build. One ruled by fear and hatred, or one where strength serves justice. She moved to the center of the hall, where servants had once set tables for grand feasts and nobles had danced to celebrate victories. Now it would serve as a war room, a place where the forgotten and discarded would plan their last, desperate stand against centuries of oppression. How long do we have? Damon asked, moving to stand beside her. 3 days, maybe 4, Garrett replied. The Iron Circle is mobilizing everything they have. This won't be a battle, Your Majesties. This will be the final war, winner takes all. Luna nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settle across her shoulders like a mantle of starfire. Tomorrow, she would stand before thousands of people who'd been told they were worthless and ask them to risk everything for the chance to prove the world wrong. Tomorrow, she would discover if love really was stronger than hatred, if hope could triumph over despair. Tomorrow, she would either save the world or die trying. But tonight, she had work to do. Send the word, she commanded, her voice carrying the authority of unified sun and moon bloodlines. Tell them the Omega Queen rises. Tell them the broken are breaking free. As messengers scattered to carry her words across the continent, Luna felt Damon's hand find hers. Their powers merged automatically now, silver and gold light intertwining like lovers' fingers. No matter what happens, he said quietly, I'm glad I bid on you at that auction. Luna squeezed his fingers, feeling the warmth of his solar fire steady her lunar ice. Even if it means war? Even if it means watching everything we've built get torn apart? Especially then. His smile was soft, genuine, holding none of the sharp edges of his royal mask. Because you've shown me what it means to fight for something bigger than myself. Outside, the last light of evening was fading into star-scattered darkness. Tomorrow would bring battle, blood, and the final accounting between old hatred and new hope. But tonight, surrounded by the people who'd chosen to believe in them, Luna allowed herself to feel something she'd thought lost forever. She felt ready. If you are enjoying this video, do well to like this video and subscribe to this channel. Chapter 8. The Valley of Howl stretched before them like a vast amphitheater carved from the bones of ancient gods. Rolling hills rose on all sides, their slopes dotted with standing stones that had witnessed the last great war between divine and mortal bloodlines 3 centuries ago. It was here, Luna knew from Vera's whispered histories, that her ancestors had made their final stand against the first Iron Circle uprising. It was here they had lost everything. But that was then. Now, as dawn painted the eastern sky in shades of rose and gold, Luna stood on the valley's rim and surveyed an army that defied every convention of warfare. Below her, spread across the ancient battlefield, were the remnants of a dozen shattered packs. Omegas who'd been cast out for being defective. Warriors deemed unfit for service. Elders abandoned by families who saw them as burdens. Children who'd never known safety. The forgotten ones. The broken ones. The ones society had labeled as worthless. Her people. Final count, she asked Marcus, who stood at her right shoulder consulting a leather-bound ledger. 4,312, he reported. Not all fighters, we've got crafters, healers, scholars mixed in. People who heard your message and decided they'd rather die free than live in chains. Luna nodded, her throat tight with emotion. 4,000 souls who'd risked everything for the chance to build something better. It should have felt like victory, but across the valley, the Iron Circle's forces were visible as dark smudges on the horizon. Even at this distance, she could tell they vastly outnumbered her ragtag army. How many do they have? Damon asked from her left, his golden aura subdued in the early light. Scouts report between 15 and 20,000, Marcus replied grimly. Professional soldiers, well-equipped, with siege engines and coordinated battle magic. He closed the ledger with a soft thud. Your Majesties, I have to ask one more time, are you certain about this? We could still withdraw, find more defensible ground. No. Luna's voice carried harmonics that made the standing stones ring like distant bells. This ends here, one way or another. I won't ask these people to live in exile while the Iron Circle spreads its poison across the continent. She turned to address the assembly of leaders who'd gathered at the valley's edge, Lieutenant Garrett with his scarred face and steady eyes, Captain Sarah from the remnants of the Moonhawk Pack, Elder Thomas who'd been cast out for defending Omega rights, and dozens of others who'd chosen hope over despair. You all know what we're facing, Luna said, letting her awakened power carry her words to every person on the battlefield below. They outnumber us 4-1. They have better weapons, better training, centuries of experience in organized warfare. She paused, meeting each pair of eyes in turn. But they don't have what we have. And what's that? Asked Captain Sarah, her voice carefully neutral. Nothing left to lose. Luna's smile was sharp as starlight. They're fighting to preserve a system that's already failed. We're fighting to build something better. They're driven by fear and hatred. We're driven by love and hope. Her power flared, silver fire dancing around her like tamed lightning. Which do you think is stronger? A cheer went up from the valley floor, ragged at first, then building into a roar that echoed off the surrounding hills. Luna felt her heart swell with fierce pride. These people had been told they were worthless for so long that many of them had almost believed it. But here, now, they were choosing to believe in something greater than themselves. Battle formation. Damon called out, his voice magically amplified to reach every corner of the valley. Remember your training. Remember why we're here. The assembled forces began to move with surprising coordination for such a diverse group. Luna had spent the last 3 days working with her makeshift officers to develop tactics that played to their strengths, mobility, adaptability, and the kind of desperate courage that came from having nothing left to lose. In the center of the formation stood their most vulnerable members, the children, the wounded, the non-combatants who'd insisted on staying rather than fleeing to safety. Surrounding them in concentric rings were the fighters, not arranged by rank or experience, but by the bonds they'd formed over the past few days. Omega and Alpha fought side by side. Outcasts from different packs had become brothers in arms. Old prejudices had been set aside in favor of simple human connection. Luna took her position at the formation's heart, with Damon beside her and their most trusted allies forming a protective circle. Her grandmother's blade hummed in her grip, its moonstone hilt warm against her palm. The weapon had evolved during the bonding ceremony, its silver edge now inscribed with symbols that seemed to shift and dance in the light. "Here they come," Lieutenant Garrett announced, pointing toward the eastern ridge. The Iron Circle army crested the hill like a black tide, their armor gleaming in the morning sun and their banners snapping in the wind. At their head rode Alpha Raymond Killian, somehow escaped from custody, somehow rallied his scattered forces for one final assault. Even at this distance, Luna could feel the malevolent power radiating from him. He'd found new sources of dark magic, new ways to corrupt his followers' strength. But there was something else moving with the Iron Circle forces. Something that made Luna's newly awakened senses recoil in instinctive horror. "Wraiths," Vera breathed from her position behind the main line. The elderly advisor's face had gone pale as winter snow. "He's brought wraiths to the battlefield." Luna squinted against the morning glare and felt her blood turn to ice. Shadowy figures flowed between the Iron Circle ranks like liquid darkness, the tortured souls of divine bloodline members who'd been murdered over the centuries, their essence corrupted and bound to serve their killers. "How many?" Damon asked, his hand moving instinctively to his sword hilt. "Hundreds," Vera replied, her voice hollow with dread. "Maybe thousands. Every god-touched being they've killed over the past 3 centuries, turned into weapons against their own kind." The Iron Circle forces reached the valley floor and began spreading out in textbook battle formation. Professional, coordinated, overwhelming. At their center, Raymond raised a staff topped with what looked like crystallized shadow, another sundering artifact, Luna realized. Something designed to cut through divine defenses like they were paper. "People of the valley." Raymond's magically amplified voice echoed off the surrounding hills. "You have been deceived by false prophets, led astray by creatures that should not exist in this world. Surrender now, and your deaths will be swift." "Counteroffer." Luna called back, her own voice carrying even further thanks to her awakened power. "Lay down your weapons, abandon your hatred, and we'll show you what the world could be if we chose cooperation over domination." Raymond's laughter was like breaking glass. "Still trying to save everyone, little moon goddess? Haven't you learned yet that some people don't want to be saved?" He raised his shadow staff, and the wraiths began to move. They flowed across the battlefield like spilled oil, incorporeal fingers reaching for the living with hunger that transcended death. Luna's people stood firm, but she could see the fear in their eyes. "How do you fight the tortured souls of the innocent dead?" "Hold formation," Damon shouted. "Remember your training." But training could only do so much against supernatural horror. The first wraith reached their outer line, its shadow touch draining the life from a young warrior who'd barely had time to scream. More followed, slipping through conventional defenses like they weren't there. Luna felt something crack inside her chest, not breaking, but opening. A door she hadn't known existed, leading to powers she was only beginning to understand. "Vera," she called without taking her eyes off the advancing wraiths. "The ritual that created these things, can it be reversed?" "In theory, yes, but," Vera's voice cut off as understanding dawned. "Luna, no. The energy cost would be enormous. It could kill you." "Maybe." Luna stepped forward, silver fire beginning to cascade from her skin. "But what's the alternative? Watch them slaughter everyone we've sworn to protect?" She could feel Damon's alarm through their bond, his desperate desire to protect her warring with his understanding that some battles couldn't be won through conventional means. "Together?" he asked, moving to stand beside her. "Together," she agreed. They joined hands, and the world exploded into light. Silver moon fire and golden sun flame merged into something that had never existed before in the history of creation, a fusion of celestial powers that turned night to day and made the ancient standing stones sing with harmonics that reached into the spaces between stars. Luna reached out with her awakened senses, touching each wraith in turn. Beneath their corrupted shells, she found the tortured remnants of her own people, divine bloodline members who'd been murdered, enslaved, forced to serve the very cause that had destroyed them. You don't have to serve them, she whispered into the spaces between life and death. You can rest now. You can be free. One by one, the wraiths began to stop. Their shadow forms flickered, struggled, then dissolved into motes of silver light that rose toward the dawn sky like freed butterflies. The Iron Circle warriors watched in growing alarm as their supernatural weapons simply ceased to exist. Impossible, Raymond snarled, his shadow staff crackling with malevolent energy. Those bindings were crafted by master necromancers. They can't be broken by mere sentiment. Not sentiment, Luna corrected, her voice carrying across the suddenly quiet battlefield. Justice. The dead don't want to serve their murderers, Raymond. They never did. You've been forcing them through pain and binding magic, but love is stronger than either. She felt the last wraith choose freedom over slavery, its essence dissolving into peaceful light. The battlefield was clean now, just mortal against mortal, ideal against ideal, hope against despair. Raymond's face twisted with fury. Then we'll finish this the old-fashioned way. Iron Circle, advance. The Dark Army surged forward with professional coordination, their superior numbers and equipment creating a tide of steel and death that seemed impossible to stop. Luna's people met them with desperate courage, but it was clear the outcome was inevitable. They were simply too outnumbered, too outmatched. But as the battle raged, something unexpected began to happen. The Iron Circle soldiers in the front rank started to hesitate, their sword strokes losing conviction. Luna realized her passive aura, the natural emanation of her unified divine power, was affecting them. Not controlling their minds like the wraiths had been controlled, but showing them truth. Revealing the lies they'd been told, the hatred they'd been fed, the innocent people they'd been convinced to murder. What are we doing? She heard one of them cry out. These are just families. Children. Why are we killing children? Because they're abominations, his captain snarled back. Because they threaten everything we've built. Do they? The soldier looked around at Luna's army, not monsters or demons, but people protecting each other with desperate love. Or have we been the monsters all along? The wavering spread like ripples in a pond. Iron Circle warriors began laying down their weapons, stepping back from the battle, questioning orders they'd followed without thought for years. Not all of them, Raymond's most fanatical followers continued fighting with religious fervor, but enough to turn the tide from hopeless to merely desperate. Traitors. Raymond screamed, his shadow staff blazing with corrupted power. You swore an oath to the cause. To the purification. He raised the artifact above his head, and Luna realized what he intended. Not a targeted attack, but an area effect that would drain the life from everything within a mile radius, friend and foe alike. Better to destroy everything than admit defeat. Damon, she said quietly. I see it, he replied. Can we stop him? Luna looked at the shadow staff, at the crystallized malevolence that powered it, at the fanatical hatred in Raymond's eyes. Not from here. Not in time. Then what? She was already moving, silver fire propelling her forward faster than thought. Behind her, she heard Damon's shout of alarm, Vera's cry of warning, the desperate sounds of her people realizing their queen was charging alone into the heart of the enemy army. Luna cut through Iron Circle ranks like moonlight through shadow, her grandmother's blade-parting armor and weapons with contemptuous ease. But she wasn't trying to kill, she was trying to reach Raymond before his doomsday weapon could activate. She almost made it. The shadow staff discharged when she was still 20 feet away, sending out a wave of life-draining darkness that turned the air itself into poison. Luna felt it hit her like a physical blow, felt her mortal flesh begin to wither under the assault of concentrated malevolence. But she was no longer merely mortal. The unified divine power within her blazed to life, silver and gold flames wrapping around her like armor. The life-draining wave crashed against her awakened essence and simply stopped. Not deflected, not absorbed, but transformed. The shadow magic meant to bring death became something else entirely, a cascade of healing energy that washed over the battlefield like gentle rain. Iron Circle soldiers who'd been struck by their own leader's weapon found their wounds healing, their strength returning. Luna's people, already touched by her natural aura, felt renewed vigor flow through their veins. Even the grass beneath their feet began to grow greener, more vibrant, as if the earth itself was being cleansed. Raymond stared at his shadow staff in disbelief. That's not possible. Nothing can reverse a sundering discharge. Nothing. Nothing mortal, Luna agreed, stepping close enough that he could see his own reflection in her blade's silver surface. But I'm not just mortal anymore, am I? I'm what you've spent your entire life trying to prevent, the union of divine and mortal, of power and compassion, of strength that serves rather than dominates. She could have killed him then. Her grandmother's blade hungered for his blood, eager to avenge centuries of persecution and murder. But Luna had learned something in her years of powerlessness that Raymond, for all his strength, had never understood. It doesn't have to end this way, she said quietly. The offer still stands. Peace. Redemption. The chance to build something better. For a moment, just a moment, she saw uncertainty flicker in his eyes. The possibility that maybe, just maybe, he'd been wrong about everything. Then his face hardened again, and he lunged forward with a hidden dagger. Luna didn't move to defend herself. Instead, she opened her arms and stepped forward, letting the poisoned blade slide between her ribs. The assembled armies watched in stunned silence as their queen fell to her knees, divine light flickering around the wound like dying stars. Luna. Damon's anguished cry echoed across the battlefield as he fought his way toward her. Raymond stepped back, triumph blazing in his eyes. Did you really think your pretty words would save you? Did you think mercy would protect you from steel and poison? He raised the dagger again, its edge still dripping with her blood. Goodbye, little moon goddess. Die knowing that your sacrifice was pointless. But Luna was smiling. You're right, she said, her voice carrying despite the pain. Mercy won't protect me from steel and poison. But it will protect them. She nodded toward the Iron Circle soldiers who'd laid down their weapons, toward the ones who'd begun to question their orders, toward the thousands of people on both sides who were watching this moment with growing understanding. You've just murdered an unarmed woman who offered you peace, Luna continued, golden blood flowing from her lips. In front of all your followers. In front of the entire world. Her smile widened, luminous with approaching death. How many of them do you think will follow you now? Raymond looked around and saw the truth in the faces that surrounded him. Horror. Disgust. The dawning realization that their cause had led them to this moment, watching their leader murder someone who'd offered redemption with her dying breath. She was a monster, he said desperately. An abomination that had to be stopped. But the words fell flat. Everyone present had felt Luna's aura, had been touched by the healing energy she'd unleashed, had seen her choose to face poisoned steel with empty hands. Whatever else she might be, monster was not among them. One by one, the remaining Iron Circle soldiers began laying down their weapons. Officers removed their helms and knelt. Even Raymond's personal guard stepped away from their leader, unwilling to be associated with what he'd become. No, Raymond whispered. No, you don't understand. The cause, the purification. The cause is dead, said the Iron Circle lieutenant who'd been standing at his right hand. And so are we, if we follow it any further. Luna felt Damon's arms cradle her head, felt his tears fall on her face like warm rain. Stay with me, he whispered. Please, Luna. Don't leave me alone. Not alone, she managed to say. Never alone. Look around. He did, and saw what she meant. The battlefield was full of people, former enemies laying down their hatred, broken souls choosing to believe in something better, thousands of individuals deciding that love was stronger than fear. You did it, Damon breathed. You actually did it. Luna nodded, her eyes drifting closed as divine fire began to fade from her veins. Worth it, she whispered. All of it. Worth it to see. Her voice trailed off into silence. For a moment, the only sound was the wind moving through the standing stones. Then, from somewhere in the crowd, a voice began to sing. Not words, just a melody, the old lullaby Luna's mother had hummed about moon goddesses and brave warriors. Others joined in, voices blending in harmony that seemed to rise toward the stars themselves. Iron Circle soldiers sang alongside Luna's outcasts. Former enemies harmonized as they mourned the woman who died to save them all. And in that moment of perfect unity, something miraculous happened. The song became light, silver flames that danced between the singers, connecting them in bonds stronger than blood or politics or ancient hatred. The light gathered around Luna's still form, not trying to resurrect the dead but celebrating the life that had been given freely for others. She opened her eyes. That's cheating, she said to Damon, her voice stronger than it should have been. He laughed through his tears. What's cheating? Healing someone with the power of communal singing. Very theatrical. Luna sat up slowly, the poison wound in her side already closing. Though I suppose if we're going to rebuild the world, we might as well do it with style. Around them, the battlefield was transforming. Weapons were being gathered into piles and burned, their smoke rising toward the sky like prayers. Former enemies were shaking hands, sharing water, beginning the long process of learning to see each other as people rather than obstacles. What about him? Damon asked, nodding toward Raymond. The former Iron Circle leader sat alone in the middle of the field, surrounded by the abandoned weapons of his former followers. He looked smaller somehow, diminished by the realization that everything he'd built was crumbling around him. Luna walked over to him, moving carefully but with growing strength. The offer still stands, she said quietly. Raymond looked up at her with eyes full of confusion and defeat. How? He asked. How can you forgive what I've done? How can you offer redemption to someone who spent his life trying to destroy everything you represent? Because hatred is a choice, Luna replied. And so is love. Every day, every moment, we choose which one to feed. She extended her hand toward him. The question is, what do you choose now? Raymond stared at her offered hand for a long moment. Around them, the work of transformation continued, people choosing hope over despair, cooperation over domination, love over fear. Finally, slowly, he reached out and took her hand. 5 years later. Luna stood on the balcony of New Haven's central tower, watching the sun set over a city that had grown from the ashes of the old world. Below her, the streets bustled with activity, former enemies working side by side, children of all bloodlines playing together without fear, merchants hawking their wares in a dozen different languages. It hadn't been easy. There had been setbacks, conflicts, moments when the fragile peace had threatened to shatter. But somehow, through patience and persistence and the kind of stubborn hope that had sustained her through 5 years of auction blocks, they'd built something beautiful. Admiring your handiwork? Damon asked, joining her at the balcony rail. Our handiwork, Luna corrected, leaning into his warmth. Though I still can't believe it worked. What, rebuilding civilization based on radical concepts like treating people with respect and maybe genocide is bad? Damon's tone was dry, but his eyes were soft with affection. Revolutionary stuff. Luna laughed. You know, for two people who were supposedly unwanted, we didn't do too badly. Speak for yourself, Damon replied. I always wanted you. Even when I was covered in auction block grime and insulting your bidding technique? Especially then. He pulled her closer, silver and gold light dancing between their intertwined fingers. Though I have to admit, I prefer you like this. Happy. Free. Ridiculously overpowered. Overpowered? You turned an army with the power of groups singing, Luna. That's not normal. She considered this. Fair point. Though in my defense, it was very good singing. They stood in comfortable silence, watching their city come alive in the evening light. Somewhere in the distance, Luna could hear children laughing, a sound that had become the unofficial anthem of their new world. Any regrets? Damon asked eventually. Luna thought about it seriously. The girl who'd stood on that auction platform 5 years ago had been broken, scared, convinced she was worthless. That girl couldn't have imagined this, a life filled with purpose, surrounded by people who valued her not for her power but for her heart, bonded to someone who saw her as an equal partner rather than a possession. Just one, she said finally. What's that? I wish my parents could see this. Could see what we built from the ashes of their sacrifice. Damon squeezed her hand gently. Maybe they can. As if summoned by his words, a warm breeze stirred the air around them, carrying the scent of moonflowers and the distant sound of lullabies sung by mothers to their children. For just a moment, Luna could swear she felt familiar presences at her shoulder, proud and loving and at peace. Yeah, she whispered. Maybe they can. The last light of evening faded into star-scattered darkness, and Luna allowed herself to feel something she'd thought lost forever. She felt complete. Not because she'd found her power, or her purpose, or even her perfect partner. But because she'd learned the most important truth of all, that the broken could be beautiful, that the unwanted could become irreplaceable, and that love, real love, was always stronger than fear. Even if it took the whole world a little while to figure that out. The end. I know you enjoyed the video. Do well to like this video, subscribe to this channel and share your thoughts on this video in the comments section below.